The sun was barely up when my quiet life shattered. At exactly 60:00 a.m., the stillness of the lake cracked wide open with the screech of a megaphone. "Attention, violator. This is your final warning." The words ripped through the morning mist like a siren from some dystopian nightmare. I jerked so hard, my mug of Earl Grey splashed across the dock, scaring a whole family of ducks into flight. Still in flannel, half asleep, I stepped out onto the porch of my lakeside cabin. The same cabin I'd spent 3 years restoring with my own 2 hands. Only to find a convoy of minivans and a shiny BMW skidding to a halt in my gravel driveway. They were marked with bold letters Crystal Cove HOA Enforcement Unit. Out stepped a woman in a neon green blazer, heels sinking into the mud, waving a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Mr. Ethan Cole," she barked, her voice amplified by her oversized ego. "You're in violation of Community Code 8.4.7, illegal wood stain." And just like that, I realized this wasn't about paint. This was war. Karen, or more accurately, the tyrant queen of the HOA, climbed the steps to my porch with the swagger of someone about to declare martial law. She raised a clipboard like it was a sacred decree and barked. "This cabin is painted cedar red. Color code A52A2A, a direct violation of our community standard which mandates coastal top. Code D3BFA5." Behind her stood 5 HOA enforcers, all in matching khaki polos. One held a measuring wheel, another a laser level, one carried a binder thicker than a legal textbook. And Derek, poor Derek, was sweating under the weight of a massive color board, featuring 50 indistinguishable shades of beige. I couldn't tell if I should laugh or call someone for psychological help. "This is Coastal Top," Karen shouted, stabbing at a color square so pale it looked like paper. "This is Dune Top, and your seat are red. It's practically a war crime against property values." I calmly sipped the last of my now cold tea and answered, "Karen, this cabin isn't painted. It's natural wood, preserved from 1850. I used a protective finish to keep termites out." Her face twisted in horror, like I'd confessed to burning the HOA handbook. She spun toward Derek. "Get the decibel reader. That wood is disturbing the emotional support parrot I rescued from a flea market." Derek, hands trembling, pulled out a device that looked like a toy. Lights blinked. Numbers rolled. The final result flashed. 92 dB. "The sound of your cabin settling," Karen announced, "is a sonic attack on our community's mental health." At that exact moment, old Jim Larson, my neighbor, pedaling by in a "World's OK's Grandpa" shirt, slowed down and surveyed the circus on my lawn. "Lady, that's just wood creaking. You know, like trees do." Karen whirled on him like a villain in a soap opera. "Mr. Larson, your siding is also non-compliant. You're on my list." But she wasn't done. Oh no, she pulled out her phone, fired up a live stream with a cat filter, complete with twitching ears and whiskers, and began to broadcast. "Day 1. Fighting back against the cabin terrorist. He's defying our standards and burning our property values to the ground." Backing up for a better angle, Karen muttered something I wasn't meant to hear. "Soon it won't matter anyway." I heard it, though, loud and clear. "What was that?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. "Oh, nothing," she snapped. "He'll comply. Eventually." But fate had other plans. She tripped, spectacularly, over a half-empty can of Coastal Top paint. The lid popped off, and the sludge splattered across her knockoff Gucci heels and neon green blazer like a Jackson Pollock tantrum. "MYCs!" she shrieked. "This is assault," Derek mumbled behind her. That's our paint." The beige brigade retreated in chaos, but not before I noticed something else. A new badge gleamed on Karen's blazer, half hidden under the beige mess. Crystal Shores LLC CEO. That name hit a nerve. Somewhere deep in my memory, 15 years in land records, something wasn't adding up. Before I could put the pieces together, my phone buzzed. 42 missed calls. Unknown number. And one chilling text. "We need to talk. Urgently." And just like that, I felt the first real chill of the coming storm. The next morning, the air at the lake was unusually still, too still. No breeze, no birds. Just the kind of quiet that warned you something unnatural was coming. I opened my front door to find a stack of violation notices scattered like confetti across my porch. Some fluttered out into the yard, where ducks waddled through them with confused quacks. 3,000 in fines. The reasons: aesthetic failure, sonic terrorism via wood creaking, wildlife nuisance due to excessive duck presence. Wildlife nuisance, for ducks, on a lake. I was staring at one particularly absurd citation. Unapproved emotional color exposure. When Jim came sprinting up the path, sweating and clearly rattled. "Ethan," he wheezed. "I got hit too. The 1,500 for my wood siding. But that's not the worst of it." He looked around like someone might be watching. There's a black SUV parked down by the boat launch. Tinted windows, no plates. It's been there for 2 days. Showed up right after Karen's performance. Before I could respond, the roar of engines cut through the morning air. Karen's signature BMW screeched around the bend, leading a rusty pickup truck. Sloppily spray painted on the side were the words, "Official Survey Crew," and out jumped Mitch, her cousin. The kind of guy who looked like he'd use a toaster oven to dry wet socks. Mitch clutched a cracked iPhone 5 and a toy measuring wheel with one spoke missing. Karen marched straight onto my dock, her green blazer flapping like a war banner. "Mr. Cole, your illegal dock extends into federal waters," she barked. "Mitch, begin the official measurement." Mitch muttered, 1, 2, wait 3, and restarted his step count after the app crashed. Eventually, he scribbled something on the back of a burger wrapper with a dry Sharpie and declared, "Based on my expert pacing, the dock extends approximately 2.9 inches into federal territory." Karen gasped.
"This is TRA.
She turned to the dozen HOA loyalists she'd summoned via Facebook Messenger and shrieked, "Everyone, onto the dock, this is a stand against aquatic tyranny." 20 khaki-clad volunteers marched onto the dock. It groaned ominously under their combined weight. "Karen," Jim whispered as sidled up beside me. "I overheard her on the phone yesterday. She said, make it look legal. Phase 2 is ready." Then he pointed. "Also see her jacket, new badge, right under the HOA pin." I squinted. There it was again. Crystal Shores LLC CEO, and suddenly it clicked. Crystal Shores. That was a dormant land development firm, one that had gone belly up decades ago. But I remembered reviewing a deed transfer once, where the original land titles were never actually surrendered, only leased. The dock groaned louder. A wooden beam cracked beneath the HOA invasion force, scattering clipboard, wielding protesters back onto the shore. In the chaos, a paper fluttered down from Mitch's folder. I caught it before it hit the water. In bold, typed font, Phase 20 complete takeover. Final solution for holdouts. Mitch lunged for it. "That's just my grocery list." I stared him down. "You buying permanent obstacle removal at Walmart now?" He turned white. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something was seriously wrong. The HOA wasn't just trying to collect fines anymore. They were executing a plan. A hostile one. And if Phase 2 was already in motion, it meant they were moving fast. At 2:00 a.m., I crept down into the cabin basement. The smell of old cedar and dust surrounded me as I reached into the back corner, where my grandfather used to keep a locked trunk marked PRI-80. Inside were blueprints, survey maps, original deeds, wax seals still intact. My pulse quickened. Could it be? By sunrise, I was sitting at my dining table, surrounded by maps, land records, and brittle parchment that smelled like history. One document caught my eye, a land trust deed from 1823, sealed with my great-grandfather's wax insignia. It didn't just cover my cabin. It included the entire 900-acre lake, its shores, and the land where the HOA boat ramp, picnic areas, and even the community center stood. It was all mine. Or more accurately, my family's. The Crystal Cove OA had built their empire on someone else's land. Before I could process the full weight of that, my doorbell rang. It was Walter, 80 years old, retired attorney, and lifelong friend of my grandfather. He held a cracked leather folder and a paper cup of gas station coffee. "Your granddad made me promise," Walter said, his voice rasping. "If anyone ever tried to take your land, I'd bring these." He placed the folder down like a Bible. Inside were surveys, contracts, and one game-changing sentence from a long, forgotten lease. The trust retains rights over water, soil, and communal access, including revocation upon violation. In short, I could revoke every lease the HOA relied on. Even the land under Karen's precious dock. Even the community center. Even her house. As we flipped through pages, a text from Jim buzzed in, "Emergency HOA meeting now. Karen's calling it Operation Hostile Takeover. Says obstacles will be removed permanently. She's got a whiteboard. You need to come." I grabbed the deed folder and bolted. At the community center, the HOA had set up like it was wartime. Karen stood by a whiteboard with my cabin circled in red Sharpie. Next to it, neutralize. Acquire. Phase 2 construction. Jim pulled me aside. "Also, Karen's got a new badge again. Says Crystal Shores CEO and Director of Land Management. She's acting like the lake's already hers." I barely had time to react when Sheriff Daniels called. "Ethan, we've got a situation." "Let me guess. Karen?" "Yup. She just called 911 screaming about an armed extremist hoarding lakefront weaponry. Says you've got an AR-15 and are threatening HOA members. Units are en route." "Sheriff, I have a fishing rod." "Yeah, I figured. But policy's policy. Expect cruisers. 3 patrol cars, an ambulance, and a skeleton van arrived like it was a hostage crisis. Karen, now Lev, streaming with a flower crown filter, wailed to 600 viewers. I'm a single mother of 4 emotional support ferrets. He's pointing an AR-15 at our community's yard. A Sheriff Daniels, 2 months from retirement and permanently exhausted, walked up to my dock and pointed at my fishing rod. That's the weapon. Whoop. Telescopic. Catches trout. A Karen sobbed harder.
He was stabbing the air. Derek saw it.
Derek, hiding behind a tree, muttered. He was, fishing. That was my cue. I stepped forward, flanked by Walter and Jim, holding the 2 boxes of family records and legal documents. Sheriff, I said loud enough for the cameras. I'm reporting trespassing, fraud, and theft of services going back 5 years. I handed over the trust records. Sheriff Daniels flipped through them, then turned to Karen. Ma'am, are you aware this entire lake, dock, and recreational land is not HOA owned? That this man's family trust owns all of it? Karen froze. That's impossible. It's a public lake. Not anymore, I said. Karen's face turned the color of coastal top. She gasped, stumbled, and, in a moment of true poetic justice, stepped right into the same paint can she'd tripped over days ago. Say memo pew, she screamed, flailing as beige sludge splattered across her fake designer purse. Teach I as a height crime. A Jim, recording on his phone, whispered, Local Karen meets karma. Lake Edition. His video went viral within hours. Over 6 million views. The top comment sent chills down my spine. That black SUV in the background, same one from the Peterson case. If you know, you know. I didn't sleep that night. Because now, this wasn't just about paint colors and dock measurements. This was war. 3 days later, chaos came before sunrise. I woke to find fake eminent domain notices taped across every mailbox on the street. The pages were printed in Comic Sans, with the phrase, Imminent domain enforcement, you must vacate within 30 days. Spelled incorrectly in bold red font. Each notice listed a random Detroit area code as the contact number. The audacity would have been funny if it weren't so dangerous. My security cameras captured Derek, the sweaty OA lackey, tiptoeing through yards at 300 a.m., muttering to himself as he stapled the forged notices like a discount Halloween prank. One of the camera mics caught him whispering, Vanessa's. Karen's gonna kill me if these aren't up by dawn. He dropped his phone mid-staple. It kept recording. All 9 minutes of him panic, mumbling about Karen's flip, the lake plan and the payouts she promised. I uploaded the footage online with a simple caption. They're not just overstepping. They're stealing. By noon, the community center was packed. Karen, now wearing a black pantsuit and crocodile tears, stood at the front of the room beneath a whiteboard that read, Crystal Shores Emergency Redevelopment Plan. Her voice cracked as she addressed the crowd. We're victims here. But I've spoken with investors. We can sell now, together, before property values crash. It's the only way out. I'm here to save us. A Jim raised a hand. Why does this official notice use Comic Sans? And why is the contact number a Michigan pizza place? He held up his phone, dialing the number. A chipper voice answered. Thank you for calling Luigi's Deep Dish, home of the triple meat lava crust. How can I help you? The room erupted in chaos. Phones came out. People compared notes. Within minutes, Derek's accidental recording had been airdropped across the room. Karen's voice, clear as daylight. Once they panic and sell to Crystal Shores, we flip the lake for millions. Phase 3 starts as soon as coal is gone. The crowd turned. I stood at the back silent, watching it all unfold. Karen stammered, tried to recover, but too many phones were already pointed at her. She was drowning in her own lies. That night, I got home to find my dock spray-painted, my cabin windows egged, and a group of hired protesters, probably from TaskRabbit, marching up and down the shoreline with signs that read, EVICTE Chan. One of them was Lev streaming from a burner phone. I called Walter. I think we're out of time. He met me at his storage unit deep in town. Together we unearthed the final records, leases signed in 1925, all marked as 100-year terms, set to expire in just 3 weeks. Every home in Crystal Cove, it turned out, was leased, not owned. Part of a century-old arrangement between the Railroad Workers Union and the original land trust. Even Karen's house. Especially Karen's house. As we loaded the final boxes into my truck, her BMW and 2 black SUVs roared into the lot, tires screeching. Karen, manic with panic, leaped out in full meltdown mode.
Steal.
That's private property. Walter smirked. So's the land you've been trespassing on. One SUV clipped a stack of Jim's old paint cans, sending a fountain of coastal top exploding across Karen's windshield. She screamed. Something about ort-based assault and painter bias, and slipped face first into a pool of pastel shame. She tried to rise, then pointed at me with a trembling, paint-covered hand. Wiel Rajuritis. I'm Kellen Antigel XY. No one answered. The final HOA meeting felt more like a trial. Over 700 residents packed into the Crystal Cove Community Hall. Some outraged, some confused, most just desperate for answers. At the front of the room, Karen stood tall, her black suit pressed, hair lacquered into a helmet of control. Beside her, a large banner ready, "Vote for emergency powers, save our community." She raised her arms like a cult leader. I know many of you feel scared, uncertain, but I'm offering stability. A partnership with Crystal Shores LLC that will secure our future, legally and financially. All I need is your trust, and your vote. The projector flickered behind her, showing a PowerPoint titled, Pays 30 Restoration. What she didn't expect was the back door opening mid-speech. In stepped Sheriff Daniels, 2 state attorneys Water, and, behind them, me. I walked slowly to the front, holding a leather-bound folder in one hand and a rolled map in the other. Ladies and gentlemen, I said into the mic, before you vote to hand over your homes, I suggest you hear the truth about the land you're standing on. A gasps echoed. Phones came out. I unrolled the 1925 land ledger across the podium. Every name, every lease, every signature. All there, sealed and legal. Your homes were never sold, they were leased. Every one of you lives on land my family trust has owned since 1823. And every one of those leases expires next month. The silence was so deep, you could hear Karen's breathing. I turned to her. Except yours, Karen. Yours expired yesterday. The color drained from her face. Walter stepped forward, holding a page. This document proves Karen's home was originally leased to a woman named Margaret Clean, who entered witness protection in 1990 after testifying against a criminal syndicate. He looked at Karen. That woman changed her name to Karen Hartley. The room exploded. She's not even supposed to be here. She built this whole thing on a lie. So we don't own anything. Before she could speak, Derek stood up from the back of the room. He held a USB stick high in the air. I didn't know, I swear, but she made me record fake documents. This has everything: her voice, the scam, the payments. He walked forward and handed the USB to the state attorney, who plugged it in. Karen's voice played over the loudspeaker, crystal clear. The second they panic, we swoop in. Buy cheap, flip the lake. They're all sheep. I'll own every inch before the leases expire. The crowd turned into a storm. Just then, the side doors burst open. Federal agents in dark suits stormed the room, badges out. One stepped to Karen. Karen Hartley, you're under arrest for mail fraud, land fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. As they cuffed her, she flailed again, stumbling into a half-empty paint can someone had brought as a gag. Coastal top splashed across her blazer as she screamed.
I'll you go!
I'm AVCTM. The agents led her away to thunderous silence. Phones were recording. Jim whispered, "There's your viral ending, right there." I stepped back to the podium. "We'll fix this. The trust will renew leases at 19.5 rates, 200 a month, locked for the next century. No OA, no coastal top," with cheers erupted. Jim raised a new sign, DOWT top, Lon IVEWOOD, and just like that, Crystal Cove was free. 6 months later the dust had settled, and the lake was calm again. Karen's trial made the local news, then the regional news, then TikTok compilations under the hashtag #FitTopTakeoverFail. Every network loved the story of the HOA tyrant turned con artist, taken down by century-old paperwork and a stubborn fisherman in flannel. The courtroom was packed the day of her sentencing. Karen showed up in a beige jumpsuit. Cruel irony. And stared blankly ahead as the judge read the charges. Karen Hartley, formerly known as Margaret Clean, you are found guilty of mail fraud, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud, misuse of HOA funds, falsification of public records, and obstruction of justice. The courtroom held its breath. You are sentenced to 7 years in federal prison, a $250,000 fine, and permanent ban from holding any position in a homeowners association or real estate entity. Karen didn't cry. She just blinked, as if finally realizing that no cat filter or HOA title could save her now. Walter patted me on the back outside the courthouse. Told you those records would matter one day. The Crystal Cove community, now free from Karen's iron grip, held a massive block party the next weekend. Kids ran barefoot across lawns that had once been non-compliant. People painted their homes whatever color they wanted. Someone even dared to repaint their garage door forest green. Jim became a local legend, and the de facto HOA replacement, though he insisted they rename it the Neighborhood Freedom Committee. His first official act. All mentions of Coastal Top are hereby banned. Forever. I returned to my cabin, finally at peace. No drones, no notices, no OA patrols measuring my dock. One afternoon, I was fishing with Walter when a familiar SUV drove slowly down the gravel road. It stopped just before my driveway. Out stepped a clean, cut man in a navy suit and sunglasses. He adjusted his tie and approached slowly. "Mr. Cole. Depends who's asking." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black folder. "No weapon, just a badge. Would like to talk. About the real Crystal Cove." The Walter raised an eyebrow. I reeled in slowly, the line tugging tight for a moment, then slipping free. The lake shimmered under the evening sun, calm on the surface, but holding its secrets deep below. I brewed another pot of coffee and invited the suited man to sit on the porch, where the first light of morning touched the lake's glassy surface. "Who are you?" I asked, eyes steady. He slid out a badgy Samuel Trask, Federal Bureau of Natural Resources Investigation. "We've been watching Crystal Cove for a long time. Karen was just the tip of something much larger. But thanks to you, we had reason to open the classified file." I narrowed my eyes. "What's really going on here?" Samuel opened a weathered case, pulling out old maps, originals, not copies. "Crystal Cove isn't just private land. It was once a strategic mineral site during World War II. Forgotten since, but the resources beneath the lake still exist, especially rare earth elements." I leaned forward. "You mean high-value minerals?" He nodded. "In 1953, the government signed a quiet agreement to keep this area off the radar. But modern tech finally picked up trace readings. And Ethan, the records confirm, your family still owns the lakebed and surrounding land." I sat back, the weight of that statement hitting harder than a storm. Did Karen know this? He flipped through another folder. Printed emails from Karen's laptop. Not only did she know, she was already negotiating a private sale to a foreign conglomerate, using Crystal Shores LLC as a front. The handover was set to happen exactly 30 days after the lease expirations. "If you hadn't uncovered the trust in time," he said, "they'd have claimed practical control over the entire region. We've monitored the deal for 2 years, but now, with your evidence, it's over." I stared out at the lake still. Silent, but no longer innocent. Samuel stood, offering his hand. "We'll help you protect this place. But the final decision is yours. You can sell, partner, or preserve it. The government wants to assist, not own." I shook his hand. "I just want to keep this lake for future generations. No more top. No more schemes. No more lies." Samuel smiled, nodded, and walked off into the pine trees. As he vanished from view, I returned to the porch, picked up my fishing rod, and cast a line gently across the still water. Beneath its surface, the past, present, and future of Crystal Cove drifted quietly. Never forgotten and never for sale. Not every battle is loud. Some are quiet. Fought with paper, memory, and a sense of what's right. This wasn't just a story about a lake or a corrupt HOA president. It was about something much deeper, the slow erosion of integrity, in places meant to be sanctuaries. It's easy to overlook the creeping control of those who wrap power in the language of community standards. Easy to stay silent when the rules seem small. But what we tolerate in whispers can eventually speak over us in shouts. Crystal Cove didn't just survive because I had old paperwork. It survived because people like Walter, Jim, and even the ducks. Yes, the ducks. Refused to back down. Because a community, when awake, is stronger than any corporate scheme. And because the truth, even buried under decades of top paint and forged bylaws, still floats to the surface. So here's what I'll leave you with: don't underestimate the power of knowing your roots. Know your property. Know your rights. Dig deep, not just into history, but into the question of what kind of neighborhood or world you want to live in. Because one day, someone might try to repaint your reality in beige. And when that day comes, I hope you have your flannel on, your fishing rod ready, and your documents in a waterproof case. If this story made you laugh, made you angry, or made you want to go check your property lines, then don't just scroll on. Seriously, like this video if you believe in standing up against HOA madness or shady power grabs hiding behind rules. It helps more people see this story, and trust me, someone out there is dealing with a Karen of their own right now and needs to hear this. Leave a comment below. Have you ever dealt with an over-the-top HOA? Ever had someone try to tell you what color to paint your mailbox or fine you for ducks on your lawn? I read every story, and some of them, honestly, could be their own episode. And if you haven't already, Hit that subscribe button. We've got more stories coming. Some funny, some shocking, all based on true events that'll make you see your quiet neighborhood a little differently. Share this video with that one friend who always says, "I'd never survive an OA." Until next time. Stay alert, stay curious, and for the love of freedom, check if your lake is secretly full of rare earth minerals.